going to hit the go live button, streaming this to YouTube, and we are live right now. Thank you so much, everybody, and welcome to this live event from Susan and myself, combined known as the Team Coaching Lounge hosts. So we try to connect leaders and coaches to talk about teams and any kind of team-related topics. So today we bring you this Ask Us Anything event, just giving you a brief overview of some of the highlights about team coaching, just the baby steps, and then we're going to open the floor to discussions. And so let's take it from there.
Great.
So the first thing always is, what is a team? Matthew, can you maybe stabilize your camera? It is moving a lot. If you can prop it against something rather than holding it, it would make everybody a little less dizzy. Thank you. So here we go. So what is a team? So John Katzenbach was one of the most renowned ones who formed a first team. And he said that it is a small number of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose, a set of performance goals, and a shared approach for which they hold each other accountable. Very, very nice definition, I think. However, we decided to add Peter Hawkins' addition to it. And he adds to that definition, and which has ways of effectively meeting and communicating that raise morale and alignment, effectively engaging with all the key stakeholders and stakeholder groups, and ways that individuals and the team can continually learn and develop. We found that the second part of it had also some very important aspects that really do belong in a team and help the team dynamic. And I also welcome Jerry to the mix. Thank you for joining us.
So let's talk about groups versus teams, because everybody thinks that a team is a team just because they are reporting to the same person or in the same line on the org chart, but that is not always the case. Definitely in corporate, many teams are actually just groups of individuals working for a single person. So let's quickly go through the difference between a group and a team. For the purpose, a group, their purpose is the same as the broader goal of the organization, right? There's this big goal and they're all trying to meet this. Within an actual team, the specific team purpose is what the team actually delivers on itself. They have a common goal. Every person in the team has that same goal. With regards to leadership in a group, there's a strong, clearly focused leader. Within a team, there's shared leadership roles. You know, Claudia and I are on the team. She takes responsibility for this. I take responsibility for that, but we're all still aiming towards the same goal. The members themselves in a group are independent. I work on my thing. Claudia works on her thing. Joanna works on her thing. On a team, we actually have to collaborate together to meet that goal. We are dependent upon each other's work for each other. The process in a group, they discuss, they decide what they're going to do, and they delegate and they go their separate ways to get things done. Within the team, we discuss, decide, and again, we have to work together to get it done. The work products, again, individual in a group, collective in a team. And then the focus in a group, I'm focused on accomplishing my own goals. Doesn't matter to me if Claudia is getting hers done, as long as I get mine done. If we're in an actual team, I care about Claudia getting her stuff done because it impacts what I have to get done. And then accountability along the same lines, individual in a group, individual and mutual for the team, right? We have to work together in order to meet the goals.
Absolutely. And so we often hear this idea of why should we even care? Doesn't it automatically work? And one thing that kind of says that no, it doesn't automatically
Magic
work
note.
is this concept of the interaction gap, and it was Max Isaac and Anton McBurney who actually wrote a book about this called "Close the Interaction Gap." And they did a very interesting research project. And what they did is they gave team members a report to read. And then they gave each individual person some questions to answer. And it showed that within the team, one or more people did get the right answer or very close to the right answer. And that is represented here in the result, the aggregate result, shown on the green backdrop. Then they did the same questionnaire and they gave it to the team. And they said, agree on your team's answer, meaning give us one results sheet after with the agreed on answers. And what we got was a huge interaction gap, as much as 70% weaker numbers. And that is what you see here in blue, meaning the answers were in the team, but it didn't get agreed on, it didn't come to the surface, and it was lost. And that truly is an interaction gap. So it's not just about individual capacities, individual contribution, but it is how do we leverage that as a collective? And how do we work together to make the best result? Yeah.
Yeah. So the line between the top, the green and the blue, that space is the interaction gap itself, right? And that, like you were saying, Claudia, right? It says that this is the result from poor interaction, poor collaboration, group think that prevents an individual who probably had the right answer from speaking up, from discussing it, from bringing it to the group. And that is the untapped potential of a team.
Right, exactly, because some people might have maybe a more aggressive, overbearing demeanor. Others might just be held as untouchable because they have a lot of seniority. Culture, corporate culture, societal culture all factor into this. But in the end effect is that the end result is much less than what it could have been. Right.
Yes.
So, we actually would like to query you guys a little bit about what do you feel, or what in your experience are some of the common challenges for leaders and teams. And if you're a leader yourself, what is kind of the thing that keeps you awake at night? What is frustrating to you and what worries you? So you can either take the mic or drop a line in the chat. That would be much appreciated. And we will talk on the next slide a little bit about results that we quite often hear. Okay, we're going to give you guys a little time. Maybe we can already go on to the next slide and then come back to results in the next one. So this is what we are hearing. And this is not by all means an exhaustive list. This is also not a ranked list. It's just some things that we come across. The leader might see that he or she is the only one speaking in meetings. All the kind of responsibility, everything is kind of delegated towards the leader. It's something we see, right?
Yep. And then in that case, or it could be one or two people monopolize the whole conversation. But additionally, we see that going back to the group kind of mentality, people are secretive about the information and the resources that they have, because they view it as an individual advantage, right? I have this connection, so I'm just going to keep it to myself because it'll help me move forward.
And, a lot of things also is just in poor resource management within the team. So there is duplication of effort. There is just one hand doesn't know what the other one is doing. So there's this just missed communication and missed potential for collaborative work and leveraging one another's work.
Yeah. And just a little side note, when I was in corporate, I had this happen a lot. And I'd be talking to a coworker and talking about what I'm doing, and they're like, wait, I'm doing that too. Right? So it was also very shocking. Another thing that we're seeing is teams can't keep up with the pace of change. Priorities are constantly changing, demands are changing, and they just can't pivot very quickly enough to meet those demands.
Right. And part of that often is that the job description in itself is very much in flux. And all of a sudden, members have different things that they should prioritize. And it's very difficult to context switch, especially in the overall arc of work of a project, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Where were we at?
Stakeholders.
Oh, yes. Why don't you take that one, Susan?
Stakeholders are getting different answers to the same question from different team members. So I talked to Claudia about one question and I get this answer. I talked to Matt, same question, and I get a completely different answer. Clearly, the purpose is not stated, and our responsibilities have shifted, and one person doesn't know what shifted, and so it causes a great deal of confusion for the stakeholders.
Right, and it brings up kind of the need of a consistent message, and
Yes.
to use a modern word that one of our clients really liked is the team's brand. What do we stand for? How do we show our team and our contribution to the outside world? And what truly do we stand for? What language do we use, and so on?
Mm-hmm. That's especially a big issue with global teams, I think.
Absolutely. For instance, you have a team that is, serving a worldwide customer base in different locations, and the end clients get helplessly confused because if they call in at 11 a.m., it's maybe the European guys who follow up, and then they call in at 7 p.m., and all of a sudden it's an American person who follows up, and they get vastly different responses and care. Yeah.
Yep.
So we already touched on this, the whole working harder and not smarter, right? I mean, just, let's learn from each other and come up with team-specific best practices.
Yeah, this is evident when the team keeps making the same mistakes over and over and over again. They're not learning. Everyone is pulled in too many directions. Team members are wearing too many hats, so they're not really able to be fully present in their role. And so they're just quick, move. No time for self-reflection, no time for team reflection.
Yeah, that is a really big one. You're so wound up in the busyness of it all that you can't really focus on the large underlying questions and purpose and intent and mission and goals and best practices and all that good stuff. It just very often doesn't happen. And as a consequence, I think the team is not performing as well as they could. This can be collaboration, communication, it can be emotional intelligence within the team, cognitive diversity within the team, psychological safety is a huge one, and so on. There can be so many things that factor into it, which is also why team coaching by its very nature is not a one-size-fits-all thing, but it is something that is truly custom made for each particular team and their situation and context.
Yep. And the next one is very prevalent today, especially with all the layoffs in tech. They have to do more with less resources. They're losing people, they're laying off people, but their responsibilities are not decreasing, right? So they really have to maximize their team potential now.
Right. And again, with that comes that all of a sudden you have more on your plate, you're given more responsibility, and or it changes. And so it's a lot that is being asked by our team members in this very hyper connected, fast changing
Yes.
world. Right.
Yeah.
Why don't you
And
take it
then
from
this,
here, Susan? I'm going to take a look at the chat.
okay. And then this one was actually, I was having initial conversations with a potential client, and he just couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. He just knew something was wrong. Something just didn't feel right with the team. He would talk about a lot of the symptoms that we're talking about here, but he just couldn't pinpoint what it actually was that was going on. And then this is what I really love is we're just not having fun anymore. We used to have a lot of fun and now we're not as a team. And one of the things I enjoyed about my corporate work was when there was joy in the team. Like I enjoyed interacting with everybody. And a lot of that goes away.
And nowadays it seems like to be like this taboo word to even use. I mean, we
Yeah.
often see people when we say, why don't we have, good times at work? They look at you like, you
What?
stated something
Yeah.
really,
We're not
really, really
supposed to, we're not supposed to have fun. We're supposed to work.
right. Before we move to the next slide, why don't we take a look here at some of the comments? So Joanna said that she thinks that a lack of emotional intelligence or proper training prevents people in teams from effective collaboration. Yeah, you're starting to deal more and more with people rather than being your little island in a cubicle. So of course, having this awareness of other and being able to adapt communication and so on, definitely a very big one. Philomen says, and thank you everybody for your contributions. Quite often team members are afraid of sharing with other team members and their leaders. Absolutely.
That's no psychological safety there.
Right. So that's the term us coaches use as psychological safety, that you're safe to try to ask a question, that you're safe to make a contribution, maybe even point something out that isn't working so well, or ask for help or give it,
Yeah.
and so on and so on. And
Yes.
that often doesn't happen. Matt says, often we just don't have collective responsibilities. In this case, the teamwork kind of falls apart.
Yep.
I tend for uh, I tend
Quasi
to
some
for
temp. Yeah.
quasi-temporary teams depending on the task at hand. And kudos to you for doing this. These ad hoc teams are definitely something that can be very, very powerful. But again, maybe it would be beneficial if it makes sense to have more of this shared uh, shared team dynamic and shared foundation of collective responsibilities.
And that also goes to a team does not have to report to the same person, right? So.
Right. Joanna says, working in hybrid environments makes it difficult to invest ourselves in teamwork, as it rarely leads to promotion, but can cause stress instead. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And maybe we can pick up on this later as well during the Q&A. And Jerry says, this is called egregor, the energetic information field of the team. People must enter this field or they will be kicked out because of it by the team, by the field itself. And he says he's feeling kind of spiritual today, but it is true. And
It is true.
we as team coaches sometimes have have truly a hard time communicating what is team dynamic, this kind of intangible uh, thing that kind of makes a team or breaks a team if it's not there, for that matter. And we all know it when we see it or feel it, but it's still hard to sometimes put your finger on it. Thank you for that. Okay, and Joanna said here again, also in terms of hybrid, meaning that we work in our department and across departments doing projects. It doesn't necessarily need to be across sites or geographically distant areas.
Mhm.
Just sometimes, you know, the guy across the hall. Yeah, yeah. Very cool. You guys know
Yep.
what's up. Very cool. Shall we
All
go to the
right.
next slide?
Yes. Oops. Yeah, I mean, we had that in there. Let me click through this. Oops. Go back. Back. All right. Having a malfunction here.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. And so, you know, needless to say that, you know,
That's a
team
good slide
coaching
too.
tries to address some of those fundamental issues that can be behind this, like gaining clarity in the team's purpose and branding, a word that we used before.
Mhm. Yep. Or enhancing communications and collaboration.
Mhm.
Really?
Exploring the team's leadership needs and preferences.
And then streamlining processes to increase productivity and performance.
Mhm. Ultimately increasing engagement between team members, but also with the stakeholders.
Yes. And the big one that we focus on is helping the team to develop a learning process and program so they can constantly increase their own maturity levels as a team.
That you don't always need to go out and reinvent the wheel in terms of how you work together.
Yes.
And so essentially that, you know, concluded just a little bit of overview that we wanted to give. And we are just going to open now up to this Ask Us Anything portion of the this event. If anybody wanted to maybe elaborate a little bit on what they wrote earlier or have a question, we would gladly open it up. But
Or do you
while you
want to take?
guys, yeah, while you guys think, why don't you maybe, we got a couple questions by people that were not able to attend, unfortunately, but they know that the recording of this is going to be made available. So they said, why don't you ask for me? Do you have the first one?
Yeah, the first one was about stakeholders, kind of like we talked about earlier. I'm finding that our team doesn't have a clear understanding of what our external stakeholders' needs and expectations are. That's one of their worries.
I mean, haven't we all kind of seen sometimes? Let's take an example of a tech team where
Oh, yeah.
the people in this tech team, whether they be on the ground or, mind you, a couple levels up as a leadership team, and they are not exactly sure who all the external stakeholders are and
Yeah.
what they would need. And yet they are the ones that we have to provide value for.
A lot
So
of teams don't take the time to sit down and really list out all their stakeholders, especially global teams, because, you know, this team in Ireland may think all these people are their stakeholders, whereas in the US, they're not even aware of those people. which,
yet they're all members of the same team, right?
which then goes back to same question, different answers, all that. Yes.
Right. And it's then, you know, the first one is to even know who they are, but then
Yep.
also, you know, how do we engage with them, and
Mhm.
what kind of support do they need? But not only that, but also what kind of resource can they be for us?
Yes.
And so a lot is left on the table in terms of what the what can be done in terms of this interaction, because that's really what needs to go across the border. It's not just the team leader's boss who is, who
The
should
stakeholder, right?
a stakeholder, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's leadership team members reports are a stakeholder, vendors, suppliers are stakeholders, that team across the hall that you
Mhm.
sometimes need to, do work with, or hand work to. So it's really quite an important thing. And so you what was the question specifically from this person?
They don't have a clear understanding of their needs and expectations. And that goes to, one, get your list, but two, involve them in your setting your goals, your objectives, right? Then you can actually get their feedback for what they're looking for, and not, and I had this again in my corporate experience. We're going to go build this thing, this product. Okay, well, what did the stakeholders want? Well, we didn't talk to them. So we were building something that they may or may not want.
Right.
And one case, in the end, they're like, what is this? We didn't even ask for this, right? And so, yeah, that you've got to involve them and get that constant feedback from them in order to stay aware of their expectations, because their responsibilities may shift too. And if you're not talking to them, you're not going to know that. And so you may be delivering on something they asked for 6 months ago when they've shifted to a different direction.
Right, because the team is, for all intents and purposes, there to provide value, to contribute
Yes.
to the stakeholders. And
Mhm.
so, just relying on a little mandate from, from the higher ups of this is what you have to do is, not always sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Philomen, did you want to add something? Okay, I saw you waving.
Anybody have any thoughts or questions? No? We can take
Okay.
another question from the
Yeah,
ones that
well,
we got offline.
yeah, well, Joanna actually posted in the chat, and Joanna, if you want to come online, audio only would also be okay. Then you could say it, otherwise I can read it. Okay, she's not available. So she asks, what is the biggest trouble coaching a group to become a team?
We actually had this in one of our clients. They never actually saw themselves as a team. So we kept talking about the team, which was a leadership team. And every time we talked to each person about the team, it was who reported to them. And they never saw themselves, this layer of leaders and managers, as a team. And I think that was our biggest obstacle we had to overcome in order to move forward.
Right. So in this particular team, they were looking up, they were looking down, but
Down.
they
They,
weren't looking at each other. So this was a
mm-hmm.
leadership team managing various sites, but towards the same goal and the same essentially worldwide customer base. And as a service provider. And it was really quite interesting how little these people with the same jobs and reporting into the same guy as well, and that were
Mm-hmm.
absolutely a team on paper, how little consciousness they had of looking at each other and working together.
Yeah, I
And
think it came out as, what's the goal of the team? And they talked about, well, we got to deliver this, that. No, what is the goal of this team? What are you talking about? No, what is the goal of this management team? And they're like, what? It was definitely eye-opening for them.
and one question that we like to ask also in our preparatory interviews that we have with each team member is, what wouldn't happen that needs to happen
happen.
if this team didn't exist? If we just obliterated the whole team, what would not happen? And that helps to kind of make a little bit more headway towards crystallizing what the true objectives are and building this sense of purpose. And frankly, Joanna, to answer your question, it really depends. It depends on, what is this team there for? Who makes up the team? What's the leader like? How easy is it for them to figure out that indeed it makes sense to become a team? Like, how incentivized are they becoming to put in the effort of learning about each other and coming to these internal agreements and ways of working together? I hope that makes sense.
Sense of purpose, like Jerry says.
Yeah. Okay, AJ said that he needed to leave. AJ, thank you so much for coming. If we didn't get around to a question, please reach out to us individually. You can find us on LinkedIn and we gladly answer your questions. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you for an insightful session. Thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like Matt has a question. Or Matt.
Yeah, I had a question. A lot of teams are spread all over the world. Do you have any recommendations for technological tools and how to collaborate? I guess you must be heavy on Zoom, but are there less, shall we say, less bandwidth intensive tools that you use or have used or recommend?
We don't actually recommend, because we found, like Claudia said earlier, it depends on the team and how they like to communicate. This one team we thought was like, hey, have more Zoom meetings. They're like, no, that's too heavy, blah, blah, blah. They preferred Slack, right? Or in some cases, WhatsApp. But it really depends on how they are going to interact best. So we don't necessarily recommend specific tools. We ask questions about what works for them.
Right. And it also depends even just before you think about how do you communicate, you have to think about information flow. And who needs to get what information, because we all have come to have this love-hate relationship with tools like Slack, when you have 500 channels going on and stuff blips up everywhere, that sometimes it becomes too much of a good thing and you're not even sure anymore what you should follow or what you shouldn't follow. So I think that information flow on the who needs to know what kind of thing. It's not like you want to hide something, but you want to respect everybody's bandwidth, is something I think that very much needs to go hand in hand with a tool choice. Or shall we have yet another meeting, or can we do it kind of in a conversation that is asynchronous in Slack or WhatsApp or email or whatever it ends up being. The tools ultimately maybe to some extent secondary to what is it you're trying to achieve, and what kind of information needs to flow. Sometimes you have to have a Zoom because you need real-time, quasi face-to-face decision making and so on, and there's no other alternative. So, but sometimes it is too much to spend half an hour in a meeting and just hear a status update from somebody about work that is not related to you, for instance.
Yep.
There's a kind of a follow-up question. I personally do a lot of individual work. There's a lot of work that only I know how to do around here. So do you have an ideal ratio of what percentage of the workday should be spent with communications to your quote unquote team versus just taking care of like very individual and technical business, or do you have any ideal ratios, just out of curiosity?
I don't think there's an ideal ratio, but I think it's really figuring out, again, what Claudia was saying, right? What's the purpose of the meeting? Is it useful? Is it worth everybody's time, right? Not just one person, right? You don't want to have a meeting that only one person is getting something out of it. But there's no ideal ratio. It just depends. Everything really just depends. And I think Claudia and I laugh at each other because we always say, it depends, it depends.
Yeah.
Because it's really kind of a bespoke model, right? Of we create what the team needs.
And I think that even if you look at a percentage, I think it shouldn't be zero. Like the
No.
team-oriented stuff should not be zero. But how much it is in any particular day depends. Sometimes you might spend the entire day in an interactive thing because maybe you have to address a crisis or do work that everybody needs to be involved in real time. And on other hands, you might spend most of the day in individual a scenario because that's just the work that you need to do today. I think more than an actual ratio, it's to keep this open mindset and to not feel alone, to have the sense that indeed you are part of a larger collective and that there's this just awareness, it's there. And you are then going to always keep engaged, offer yourself to and your expertise to others. You also know that you can ask for help. And so it is, I think that more than an actual percentage, I have to spend another 20 minutes interacting with somebody today, God knows about what, then I think maybe it's more like, do I need this? Can I add value? Can I receive value? And what can I do today to support and nurture this team dynamic for everybody? So it's not only looking at your work, but kind of knowing what's going on for the others and so on. But again, it really does depend. Every team is different. Sometimes every work is different. Every day is different. But I think that in a well-functioning team, these things are addressed and they have been talked about. And it's not like you feel like you're imposing if you ask for somebody, for a team member's input or contribution in any kind of way.
So it sounds like a lot of have to see it before you can advise or do it, I suppose. So are there any like some very basic rules of thumb how to I don't know, improve teamwork or something like that? Or maybe the question is too general.
Yeah, that is a big, it depends.
Starting to get the point.
Depends what the issues are. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And sometimes it's even, we're talking about team coaching here, but oftentimes it actually starts with individual coaching that the leader receives. Because I think if there's such a falling apart of work and these rules that are not set and things like that, very often it's also up to the leader sometimes to take the reins on things like that. And that can happen sometimes, without explicit team coaches to come in, which do help with all of those things. Obviously, we're there as a great resource to move this process forward much more quickly. But sometimes even bringing it up in the team collective can say, this is something that I see. What do you guys think about it? And raising awareness, I think, is always the first thing. Because you don't know, are you the only one having this problem? Does everybody have this problem? Is this something that the team needs to address? the team leader needs to address, resources need to be provided by the organization. It really depends. And, that's kind of the challenge Susan and I see. Every engagement that we go into, we have to just see first. We have to get the lay of the land, talk to people, get to see what works, what doesn't, and then we turn it over back to you guys and say, this is what we observed. Does this resonate with you? Is what we observed really what you feel? And if it is, then it's like, well, what are you going to do about it?
Okay.
I would also go back to what, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, Yuri, the sense of purpose. If you get a common sense of purpose, that definitely, I think, is the first step for really creating a team, right? I think I would start there, Matt, right? Do you all have a common goal that you're all reaching for? Because then you can focus. Because then you're like, let's gather the troops and figure out how we're going to get there, versus Matt, you go do that and I'll go do this. And hopefully in the end, we'll accomplish something. But I think sense of purpose, a single sense of purpose is the biggest.
Okay. That's kind of challenging to get.
It is very challenging. It's very challenging to get, especially if you've been working as individuals for so long. I'm sorry, my cat keeps walking through here.
Also, if your responsibilities are spread pretty thinly, so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
but then that's a discussion to have too. If you're all spread so thinly, what is going on? You're really probably not working as a team then, because you're all doing individual tasks. So going back to sense of purpose, is this really what we are all supposed to be working on? Or can we collectively work on one thing and gain more or increase our value?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yuri, any thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. I have just very briefly, I have put 2 links to the chat, which influenced my work since the last 10 years. I have built a community of 4,000 business owners, and this community is working and they're coming back according to these 2 principles. First principle about Wu Wei. These are some Eastern traditional principles for leadership. And this is my first link for YouTube video, so I really recommend everybody to watch it. I like it. And the second, I discovered recently this art of doing nothing, which is really interesting for me. And I incorporate this in business as well. And it starts working for me very positively. So these 2 things I would like to mention today. Thank you for a great session.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for your insights and for being with us, most definitely.
Thank you.
And he had also earlier wrote in the chat that I think we need to celebrate, apprise, and positively affirm our team members. Right, because they are out there and the leaders to achieve something. So I really believe that it speaks to, celebrating successes, moving forward and recognizing the things that work well, rather than always just reprimanding the things that do not go well. And that's part, incidentally, I think, of what in a greater scheme we call the this reflection, this self-reflection, really looking at what works, what doesn't work, and learning from that, and really putting it front and center.
Okay.
Right. We had another question from a person who wasn't able to be with us today. And this person said that they were worried that they might be micromanaging their team leaders. I'm torn between not wanting to stifle their creativity or autonomy, but on the other hand, ensuring that they're meeting their goals and objectives. How much management and leadership direction is too much or not enough?
Can I say it again? It depends.
Depends.
Yeah, it really does depend. I mean, it depends on your team. It depends on the maturity level of the individuals. If you have a whole bunch of, junior level, say engineers, it may take more managing. Whereas, hold on, my cat keeps walking through, stepping on my keyboard, turning things on. Okay. Yeah, whereas you have, a bunch of senior architects, you probably are really pissing them off if you're telling them what to do every step of the way. So again, it really depends on the makeup of your team, how much they actually need direction, how much they can do on their own. And again, those are conversations as a manager that you have with each individual to figure out how they best work and how much guidance they need and how much direction they want. So,
Right, because we mentioned earlier, actually, in the things that it's explore the team's leadership needs and preferences. Because, we often hear when we do leadership coaching, it's like, what is the leadership style, the most perfect leadership style? And there again, no surprise there, it depends. And I think a really great leader is a leader who can adapt their leadership style to what the team needs. Sometimes it might be a little bit more authoritative. Sometimes it might be a little bit more laissez-faire. And so I think that is where true leadership shines. And it also changes with the work. Even though you might have senior people, certain work just requires more structure, and other work allows for a little bit more openness. So again, the contexts are very determining in how this is approached to figure out the optimal leadership style. And not all micromanaging is bad. Sometimes it's just really needed.
Absolutely.
It depends.
It depends. We say that so often, and
but see, I think it bears mentioning, though, that when we say it depends, doesn't mean that we do not have frameworks and methods in which to address this. It's just that we have, we adapt what we use to the team in question. And it's kind of like you have this rucksack full of tools and methodologies and frameworks that you carry around with you. And then depending on the needs of the team and the team leader and the organization and whatever plays into it, you pull out the one that is the most appropriate at that moment. It does not mean that team coaching is in any way wishy-washy, or that there's structure, or that there's no measured progress. No, that's all taken care of. But when we get asked questions in terms of what's the best or how much should I, those are very difficult questions to answer in a vacuum, in an absolute. Context matters too much for that.
Yeah. And I'd be, not to be negative, but I'd be a little wary of a coach who says, I have a plan and this works for every team.
Yeah.
That would be something to be a little cautious about, because every team is so different and it has different needs and is at different levels of maturity. There's no way one plan can work for every team out there.
Right. Because a plan or a program that's cast in stone is by its very nature based on average.
Average, yeah.
No team I have ever met is average.
We don't want average. We want good. We want awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my cat is back.
And so I think that if nothing, hopefully this is something that came through, that it is both the challenge but also the fun of a team coaching engagement, especially from Susan and my views. It's that we never really know what we walk into, and yet we walk in knowing that we can make a difference. And
Yes.
that's very challenging. Sometimes you need a lot of nerves to do this kind of work, but on the other hand, it is really fun and so satisfying when
Oh yeah.
a team come together and really make headway. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Oh, I think we got one about, this person said, is it just me, or is it not, is not having team KPIs counterproductive? Do you have them? Should you have them? What would they be? Team KPIs. That's like one of our, I think,
This is my favorite.
yeah, pet peeves. And so why don't you talk to it a little bit, Susan?
Yeah. Like I said, I've worked in corporate for many, many years and absolutely hate the performance review process, especially when you're working in a team, because I have never seen, and maybe there are some out there, but I have never seen any kind of review of the team as a whole, how we work together, how we are effective together, how we communicate together. And I've just never seen it. And I think it is absolutely critical, especially now with doing more with less people, that be measured on a regular and ongoing basis. And even if it's not formally documented somewhere, as a team, you should take the time to sit and discuss that. Like, how are we doing? Let's rate ourselves. Sorry, my cat is here. Let's rate ourselves and keep a measurement of that on a quarterly basis to see how you're improving, because that will also set the stage for creating team development goals, which contributes to the learning and overall effectiveness of the team that we talked about earlier. But I really want to start working on those.
Maybe you should introduce your cat. I'm very curious now.
Oh. This is Yoda.
A very big kitty cat.
Can we see his face?
No, he's getting a little grumpy because I'm ignoring him. So. Yes.
Why don't you show his face to us? I'm very curious now.
And let me see if he'll do it. Here we go. Here he is.
Oh, well, it's a big cat. Oh,
He's a
go.
very big boy.
Yeah, and so back to the KPIs just before we close the session. It is kind of also what then would be or what isn't incentivized if teamwork.
Yes.
Comes back to the question Matt said earlier. It's like how, if everybody is incentivized for their personal contribution and individual pieces of work and meeting individual development goals and so on, if that's all that shows up in performance reviews and your grade, how are you then incentivized to take a look at the team and maybe lend a helping hand to somebody else or contribute more in discussions and so on? So it is this, there's just no attention being given to it. It's not rewarded. It's not, front and center in one of the things you should also keep front and center in your mindset as you approach your work. And so KPIs, a lot of these things that might on the outside appear much more fluffy can actually be measured. There is, for instance, assessments for psychological safety. There is assessments for collaboration. There's metrics that can be used. So, but again, I think that even if there were no special assessments run, even if it's just part of a 360 process, how did we work together? That really, I think, would already open up a lot of mind space of everybody as it comes to contributing to the team as a whole.
Yep.
How are we doing on time?
I think we only got a couple minutes, so let's see if
So,
anybody else has any questions and
yes,
wrap it
please.
up.
Joanna says that she enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Joanna, for being here. And again,
you.
everybody, if there's questions we didn't get to today, we are always available to you. Either send us a request on in our personal mailboxes on LinkedIn or wherever you find us, and we will get back to you and potentially give you a video meeting if you need it. So nothing else is coming in on the chat. So thank you everybody so
Thank
much
you.
for coming. And we hope that has provided a little bit of input. Just stay connected. Please engage with our content on LinkedIn if you find it interesting. We are always here. We're going to do probably another Ask Us Anything in maybe the fall. So if you have questions until then, you can always jump on, and it would be our pleasure.
And join us in the Team Coaching Lounge. And if you want to actually join us live in the Team Coaching Lounge, let us know.
Right, just for those who might not have seen any of our videos yet, Susan and I started recording short 10-15 minute topic related videos that are on the Top Coach Luxembourg channel on LinkedIn, on YouTube. But if you go to the Team Coaching Lounge page
on LinkedIn,
there's links to all of them, and so we hope that you enjoy them, and please consider subscribing. That would be a big boost to our morale to keep going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Michael and Jeff stayed till the end. Thank you so much. And I will end the stream.